I remember when I was a kid that I watched cartoons every single morning before going to school. This good old Cartoon Network. I really miss that channel. Sorry, that was the 90s kid nostalgia. And then, at lunch break, I ate with my parents, and they usually watch the news while eating. And as a consequence, seeing my parents watching the news religiously every single day, I thought that if one day I wanted to be a responsible adult, I also had to watch the news. And most people think so, right? If you're a respectable executive, for example, you must be always on top of the news. Later, when I was 13 or 14 years old, I progressively stopped watching cartoons and instead I started watching the news more and more. And I remember that was quite a transition, right? Because I was not a kid anymore. I was becoming an adult because I was watching the news. And I kept going. And later, when I started studying economics, I watched the news even more because I thought that as a future economist, I really had to be on top of the news to understand what was going on with the GDP, what was going on with inflation, and so on. But for a while already, since something like 3 years, I have completely stopped watching the news. I just never watch it. Have I become an irresponsible person? Am I completely ignorant of what is going on? The answer to both questions is no. I stopped watching the news because I think they're flat out toxic. And to be honest, I think there's nothing more harmful than the news in the whole television. But seriously, I think that watching reality TV is much better than watching the news. Because at least, well, reality TV, nobody takes it very seriously. Watching the news is toxic in my opinion for 3 main reasons. 1, news are exclusively profit-driven. Number 2, the news are not useful and even harmful. And 3rd, news disturb our inner peace and our inner stillness. Let's start with the second. Most of what you watch is not useful. I would say that only 10% of what you watch in the news is useful information. Those are major world events such as the war in Ukraine or the higher inflation in the US and in Europe and so on. But when you look at the 90% of the remaining information, it is, in my opinion, totally useless. Those 90% of news are very often small crimes, the innocuous opinion of some annoying celebrity, or the senseless tweets of some politician. Or they take a major world event and they dig so much, they dig and dig and dig to provide us all the details that are really not that helpful. And that is in particular the case with 24 hours news channels because they have to air and give you information for 24 hours, so they have to keep going and blabbering about anything, right? And when I was seeing this kind of news at a moment, I really stopped and I asked myself the question, is it really useful information? Does it really make my life better to know these kind of things? And guess what? 90% of the time, the answer was no. Because there is this thought, this dogma, that the more you know, the more information you have in your brain, the better. But I think it's not necessarily the case. I invite you to ask yourself the same question. Really ask yourself, how does knowing this piece of news makes your life better? How does knowing what is the last stupid thing that Meghan Markle said, or that there was a shooting in the streets of Brazil, makes your life better? But that question may lead you to another question. Why do the news don't give you news that are actually useful? Well, that is a perfect transition to my first point. News are purely profit-driven. Now, I'm not going to criticize news company for wanting to make money. We live in a market economy, we live in a capitalistic society. If a company wants to continue to exist, they have to make a profit. There's no issue with that. But still, I feel like there was a shift. I feel like before, reporting, especially newspaper, were more purpose-driven. Their purpose was really to deliver you biased, true, and useful information, and then make a profit on top of it. I feel that now there was really a shift, and now, especially with TV news, their sole purpose, their only objective is to maximize the profit. Even if they give you, to achieve this objective, even if they give you totally biased, untrue, and useless information. They only focus on maximizing their profits at the total expense of the quality of the news, if that is necessary. And this shift in priority is very noticeable. Now, let's break down their business model very quick. News networks want to get your attention. They want your eyeballs, and they get your eyeballs by promising you to deliver news. Then come advertisements. Companies want to advertise on news network because they know that news network have a lot of eyeballs, and all those eyeballs, some of them are potential clients. That's why companies are willing to pay millions of dollars for just 10 seconds of advertisement time in front of millions of eyeballs. This business model has a very clear conclusion. The more eyeballs, the more attention the news network can get, the better, because they can charge more money for advertisements. And as I said previously, news networks get your attention by promising you to deliver you news. But what they're selling you is not exactly news. They're selling you strong emotions. They're selling you curiosity, gore, or fear. Think about it. Why do you think that in the news they mostly show you violence, crimes, wars, natural disasters, and other bad news? That is because they're playing with your emotions. They want to trigger fear, anxiety, anger, curiosity, gore, or whatever other emotions in you. Because when people feel strong emotions, they want to come back. The same reason why people also watch horror movies. When you feel those strong emotions, you kind of like it. So that's why you ask for more and more and more. And that is why people watch the news and they cannot stop. They're watching more and more. They watch the news to get strong emotions. And being informed, being a responsible person on top of the news, that is only an excuse actually to get those strong emotions. By the way, that reminds me of something I heard. I have no idea whether that is true or not, but I heard once that there was a news network that was created that only reported happy news, and it didn't last very long. Because again, if you deliver happy news, the strong emotions are absent. So I think you understood the business model of a news network. They sell eyeballs to advertisers, and they get those eyeballs by selling people strong emotions. And when we know that, it makes total sense why news network give you the news that they give you, because they want to give you strong emotions. And then, on top of this business model, came the modern marketing technique. And modern marketing understood very well that it is very important to segment a market. To segment a market means to take a population, to take a market, and divide that market into subcategories, each subcategory being a segment. Segmenting the market makes the advertisements much more effective. For example, if you sell premium cars, it is completely useless to spend advertising dollars on people who don't have the means to buy those cars. So it's much better if you use all this advertisement for premium cars to show it to only people who could potentially afford to buy those cars. And that is exactly what news networks have done. They have adapted their content to segment the market, to get eyeballs with very precise characteristics. And again, there's nothing wrong with segmenting a market. Almost all companies do that. It's a common business practice. But I think that the problem arises because news networks have decided to segment their market by political views. Yeah, CNN, I'm talking to you. And Fox News, I'm also talking to you. With the case of CNN and Fox News in the US, it seems pretty obvious to everybody that CNN targets Democrats living in big cities and Fox News targets Republicans living in the countryside. And they consequently adapt their content to please their target demographics. That's why those news channels enjoy so much reporting about controversial politicians, to make the audience angry. Just like the stupid overcoverage of Donald Trump. But seriously, I once saw an entire article that was talking about how Donald Trump drinks from a glass of water. Or Fox News that is constantly saying that Joe Biden has Alzheimer's disease whenever he makes a little mistake. All that goes to say that because of this business model and because of the way they segment the market, news network cannot give you useful, unbiased information. Even if they wanted to, this business model prevents them from doing so. And that also explains why the news you see on TV are not useful. And finally, the third reason why I stopped watching the news, even if they were completely unbiased, objective, and useful, is that watching the news disturbs my inner peace. It prevents me from achieving stillness. Being over-informed and being aware of everything that is going wrong in our planet can make us grow anxious and cynical. Sometimes it's just better to plug your ears. Think also about this. What can you do about all the bad things that you hear in the news? Nothing. You can't do anything about it. If watching the news makes you feel bad and you can't do anything about it anyways, what's the benefit of watching the news? For instance, I remember a few years ago in a former job I had a colleague who watched the news every single morning before going to work. And I would say that 80-90% of the time, when she arrived to the office, she was always pissed off and angry about what she heard in the news the morning prior. And I was really thinking, is that really a nice way to start the day? Starting the day to be pissed off and angry because of what you heard in the news? How can you get inner peace and achieve stillness if you're pissed off every morning? It's impossible. Or also during the COVID-19 pandemic, I observed that the most anxious people were also the people who watched the news the most. In those cases, there's only one way to achieve inner peace, is to just cut the news. Just cut it. The moment I was personally fed up with the news was Around 2019, if I remember correctly, it was the moment where the news were bombarding us non-stop with Greta Thunberg. They were showing her every single day, without exception, to make people either love her or hate her. The breaking point for me was when I saw this.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying.
Oh my god, it's so cringe. It's so cringy that still today when I watch it, it gives me goosebumps.
How dare you!
And to be clear, I have nothing against Greta. I was just fed up how they were bringing her again, and again, and I could really feel that those news networks, they wanted a reaction out of me. So there was just a moment I said, enough. I went cold turkey. I stopped watching the news completely the next day. I adopted what some people call a low information diet. I realized that there was really no need of me being on top of everything. Really, there was no point. And actually, I observed something pretty amazing that I would like to share with you. A little secret. That secret is, even if you stop watching the news completely, you're gonna find out about the very important news anyways. If it's really important, you're gonna know about it. For example, you're gonna see the headlines of the newspaper when you walk on the street, or people are going to talk about it to you. For example, when the Queen Elizabeth died a few weeks ago, I didn't watch it in the news. I found out because my mom, she called me and then she told me, hey, did you know that the Queen Elizabeth died? Well, I found out that the Queen Elizabeth died without watching the news. Isn't that crazy? What I also did is that on Instagram, I started following some pages such as Yahoo Finance or Bloomberg, and then I just see the headlines. If something really important happens, I will see it in the headlines in Instagram. And if I'm really interested about something, if I really want to dig deeper, for example, about inflation or economic crisis or whatever that may be, then I research rather on YouTube. I like to consume the content of independent content creators on YouTube because they have a bigger incentive of telling the truth and give you something that is unbiased compared to the news network. So that's exactly what I do. And since I adopted this low information diet and this selective ignorance, I really have much more inner peace. I have much more time because I'm not spending time watching the news, and I'm genuinely a happier person. So if that worked for me, maybe it can also work for you. So that was it for this video about the news. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If that is the case, a little thumbs up is always appreciated. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel, and if there is a topic you want me to cover in a future video, shoot me an email to the address that is in the description below. And I will see you soon.